The second speaker is Mr. Miltiadis Kyrkos, who is a Greek member of the group of the Progressive Alliance of Socialists and Democrats in the European Parliament, and who also serves as the Vice Chair of the European Parliament's delegation to the EU-Turkey Joint Parliamentary Committee. Mr. Kyrkos.
Dear friends, it's a great pleasure to be in Tel Aviv again. I had a chance to visit with our committee sometime in the past, and it's an honor to be here. I'm very thankful to our host, INSS, and to the organizations, especially the Foundation for the Progressive Studies in Brussels. There haven't been many months since we received President Rivlin of Israel in the parliament, and we heard a long speech, but full of all the problems that our region faces. And of course, we received him with a standing ovation. We said goodbye to him with a standing ovation. Some weeks later, we received Mr. Abbas from the Palestinian Authority, who also explained about his opinions for the region and for the problems with Israel. And also, we sent him with a standing ovation. That made me the target of all my friends. Palestinian friends, Jewish friends, Israeli friends, all my friends, why I stand up to a murderer. A murderer. Everybody was seeing the other as someone who represents all the evils that are on the table. Because I personally, a left-wing and an atheist, standing ovated to the Pope and to the King of Spain, for whom my political views are totally opposite, I can say that the way of the parliament is not to express personal feelings or personal policies, but to try and understand and also bring together. This is something we have to do. But today we have to speak about refugees, immigration, borders. I heard yesterday in a fine speech Mr. D'Alema explaining why exporting democracy was not the best case. Exporting democracy to the Arab Spring, imagining that in the short time these countries could make steps they didn't do for a long time. It was our mistake. Mr. Gusenbauer today very colorfully explained the same. Where were our mistakes in that course? And I would like to add into this narrative Ukraine, because also in Ukraine we promised, not we as a European Union, because we don't have a foreign policy, but European states promised to the people in the Maidan Square things that they couldn't deliver, intentionally or unintentionally. The result was that Crimea was lost, the eastern part of the country is in a civil war, and there is no solution. So we must be very careful what we do, because the results are over the heads of ordinary people that are forced to leave or to live in inhumane conditions. Last year, Europe received a huge wave of refugees from Syria, but also economic migrants from the east or from the African countries, from the south. These waves passed through Greece and Italy, the frontier countries, as we say, the countries of the first line. It was not the first time in the last 40 years that Europe received a burden of economic migrants. After the wall collapsed, there were hundreds of thousands of people, millions even, coming into Europe for work and for a better future. They did not create such a problem to the society. They did not make part of the populist rhetoric against foreigners, or sometimes they did, but not in the scale that we see this issue now. They were integrated, more or less, differently in every country, but now we had millions of people coming from basically Muslim countries, and we have not solved how we Europeans address the problem of integration of people of another religion. The French example, the English example, totally different between themselves, produce the same bad results. We see fighters going to ISIS from England and from France and from Belgium. Our kids, second or third generation of people that came into our continent, were exporting terrorists, and we have not found a solution. And now we receive millions of poor and homeless and people in tragic conditions fleeing for war zones or economic disaster. So there were solutions offered, two solutions coming from the past with tools that belong to another era. One, the right-wing solution, at last built Europe fortress and kick them into the sea or put them in small islands and forget about them. And the other, the populist left solution, create safe and open corridors for anyone that wants to come to Europe, non-recognizing the difference between refugees coming from war zones or economic migrants coming from poor countries that have maybe no economic future. These were two solutions that exist in Europe, and the European Union decided a third one, to try and find ways of stopping the pull factor of Europe, trying and find ways of supporting the refugees near to their homes. And that was the agreement with Turkey. The agreement with Turkey, a very sensitive agreement, but allowed funding from Europe to refugees in Turkey, adding to the funding to refugees in Lebanon and Jordan, and also creating difficult conditions for them in my country, because the borders closed, 70,000 people were locked into Greece with a promise of relocation. After 1 year, only 10% of them were relocated. So the European decision showed that produced results. And we copied, because Italy still receives migrants from Africa. So we create now the Fund for Africa, the relations with 16 countries in Africa that will get 62 billion by money from the European Union in exchange of receiving back the economic migrants. You see that our policy is based on the difficult decision to keep the migrants outside Europe and to support the refugees as much as we can in a third country. This is the reality. It's not the best solution. I read that the Israeli solution concerning migrants for Africa is even worse, about the Holot camp and the number of people applying for asylum and getting it in comparing to the people that do not get it. So it seems that our countries try to find solutions, but every solution is very, very difficult. 2 words for Turkey. Maybe in the discussion we can have more than that. Visa with Turkey, it will be a disaster to have open gates for Turkey. Every Turkish citizen without a visa to come to Europe, it will be inundated by Turkish workers. Really? Out of 100 people asking for visa, 96 received it till now. All this on the latest years. There is no flow from Turkey to Europe. There is no flow through the immigrant or the refugee flows. Only a very small number of Turkish citizens pass the GNC without any control. So the visa question has become an ideological and political tool. And you want to change from that and put it in the correct dimension. It's not something we have to bargain with Erdogan's Turkey, but it is something we have to see as we see the visa for Ukraine, for Georgia, for Moldova, and all the other countries. Now about the borders. 3 λεπτά. Now about the borders. The borders in the Middle East were drawn after the war to end all wars. And they were as successful as that war to end all wars, because it was very soon followed by the second war to end all wars. Now the situation in Syria, in Egypt, as our previous speaker explained, is drawing new borders. And you have the example of Cyprus. It is strange, but the most important element that shows where Turkey is going is not what Erdogan says, but it is what Erdogan will do on the next 3 months. If the Cyprus problem is resolved, and it falls mainly on President Erdogan's hands to do so, to retreat the army that still exists in that European soil, then Turkey's position in Europe may change. The relations will be upgraded. If not, there will be a crash on the way of Turkey towards Europe, and it will be very, very sad. Because, to come back to our relations, the relations of EU to Turkey is the same as EU to Israel. Because if you go to Turkey, you will hear the citizens saying, Europe does not care about us. Exactly what I hear in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. When I go to Turkey, I speak with people that do business, and they say Europe does not care about us, exactly as we see people here saying. The way is to propose the economic ties that we have to be elevated into more close political ties. And this is something we have to do deeper and deeper. Thank you very much.